Welcome everyone to Devonshires Claims question and answer forum on obstetrics leading to medical negligence claims. My name is Karen Cathcart and I'm a partner within the firm specialising in medical negligence. Here with me today is Kim Huggins, solicitor also specialising in medical negligence with over 20 years experience. Our special guest speaker today is Mr Myles Taylor, consultant obstetrician and gynaecologist based in Exeter. Mr Taylor also works as a medical legal expert, helping the court to determine whether mistakes have been made in the care of mothers and babies from an obstetric point of view. I'm now going to hand over to Kim, who's going to ask Mr Taylor a few questions, and we'll have a short discussion. Many thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Mr Taylor, thank you for your time. You're a well-known and respected consultant obstetrician and gynaecologist, and as Karen mentioned, you're also a medical legal expert. Can you just start off by telling us a bit about what you do and what made you opt for a career in obstetrics?
Thank you very much to you, Kim and Karen. I started off training in medicine in Oxford, and then initially thought a career in general practice, bizarrely, was for me, because I didn't actually enjoy obstetrics as a medical student, but then as a GP, as part of the rotation, I really thought this was the thing. So I actually went back into hospital medicine, and having vowed never to work in London or do research, I ended up doing 5 years at Queen Charlotte's, doing both, and I actually did a PhD focusing on identical twins, and then decided to move to Exeter, to the lovely countryside round here, where I do fetal medicine and obstetrics mainly, and also have a practice in gynecology. I started doing medical legal practice under the wing of Professor Fisk, who some of you will know, who was very active in the medical legal world. And so I trained under him, got an idea, and got an interest for this type of work. And I've been doing it for the past, well, nearly 20 years.
Lovely. That's an interesting career history you've got going on there. It's interesting, isn't it, how we say we won't do something but end up falling into it and excelling at it. So well done to you. Obviously, Karen and I deal a lot with all kinds of clinical negligence claims, but we're seeing a persistent pattern really with obstetrics and gynecological based injuries. Sadly, at the moment, we have many cases involving birthing injuries, resulting in serious lifelong injuries that could have quite easily been avoided. For example, one that we currently have running is one where the defendant trust accepts that an earlier obstetrics review would simply have been enough to have resulted in an earlier birth, and would have avoided the brain injury that then ensued to the baby and the subsequent cerebral palsy, which will naturally have lifelong implications for this child. With your vast amount of obstetrics experience, can you talk us through some of the more common mistakes you're seeing or have seen historically that are made during childbirth?
Thanks. One of the sad things about medical litigation and obstetrics is that the same themes seem to come up time and time again. There was, back in 2012, I believe, a look at 10 years of claims in maternity care, and that document has not been repeated, and to be honest, doesn't need to be, because the same messages come out loud and clear. So the main type of case is to do with identification and acting on the presence of an abnormal CTG. That is the number one. I've just quickly looked it up, and it's about 70% in terms of money, at least, of the claims. So CTG interpretation is extremely important. The other things are less so, but do amount to considerable quantum, if you like, in cases, and they are the interpretation of antenatal ultrasound. The other thing that seems to recur is perineal trauma. And then finally, uterine rupture, particularly after a mother has a cesarean section in the previous pregnancy, and the management in the index pregnancy of that scar.
And would these be things that you see as still being prevalent now? It just keeps happening time and time again, because it's certainly an experience that we have.
Yes, time and time again, I'm afraid. CTG, just to sort of, for your interest really, was designed back in the 1970s. It was a way of looking at the fetal heart using Doppler and then printing it out on a bit of paper, essentially. And then people have put various interpretations on the patterns and decided that this is the way we're going to monitor particularly high-risk mothers, and hopefully the heart will tell you that something's going on in time for you to deliver baby before damage can occur to the fetal brain. So that all sounds well and good, and you think over the last 50 years that we would have nailed this, but we haven't. And part of the problem is the technology itself is actually pretty poor. So if you think about what you have at your disposal now, in terms of what was then in terms of, say, computers, they have gone beyond all recognition. Whereas the CTG machine is essentially still the same. So the technology is letting us down badly. But also, on top of all this, are the human factors. And they have got, if anything, far worse. Because interpreting something in the cold light of day, or dare I say it, in the council's conference with the instructing solicitors, is fine. You have a forensic analysis of this. It's an absolute gift for lawyers. Yet, in the sort of cut and thrust of the delivery suite, with pressures of multiple things going on at the same time, you're tired, worked a long shift, and so on and so forth, short-staffed particularly, it becomes a really, really difficult thing to do properly. So I haven't got the solution. I can point to where the problems are.
Lovely, thank you. Just following on from there, really, can you describe perhaps 5, if you can think of 5 off the top of your head, worst mistakes that you've seen in your career as a medico-legal expert in relation to childbirth, which may have led to successful conclusions of claims, settlements, etc.?
Yes, I can think of a number of ones. They stick in my mind. There was one case where a mother requested screening for group B strep, a very topical subject, because at the moment, as you know, in the NHS, we don't screen for this condition. Remember, group B strep is present in many mothers, about 20% or so, and a very few number of babies can be infected by it and have dreadful disease. So the argument goes to and fro about whether we should screen for this. Currently, we don't. Well, in this particular case, the mother requested it, and it was in the private sector, so you can do these things. But the surgeon, sorry, the obstetrician, swabbed the mother, and the result came back negative. She had a perfectly normal delivery, and baby seemed to be doing fine. And you know what's going to happen. The baby then developed sepsis and sadly had terrible brain damage. So from group B strep. So we looked back at this, and the crucial mistake, which probably would have taken 10 seconds of extra time, no extra money, was that rather than taking a vaginal and rectal swab, he or she only took a vaginal swab. And the yield from a rectal swab is very, very much higher. So the argument ran, you know, failed to take or to perform the screening test properly. Had he or she done so, would have identified group B strep antenatally, would have prescribed antibiotics in labor, and baby would have been fine. So that tiny, tiny mistake escalated into huge proportions. Got lots of other interesting cases. I guess one of the biggest cases, I wasn't involved in this one, but I had a very similar one. The biggest case in NHS litigation was a couple of years ago in London, and the details will not be revealed because it was settled out of court, but I understand that was a failure to identify a breach presentation, and you know what's going to happen. It all went very badly wrong, and baby became brain damaged, and that settled for about £28 million. So I've had a case similar to that, which settled for about half of that, I understand. You know, the mother thought it was very uncomfortable. That's not a very reliable guide. The midwife thought it might be breech, went to find an obstetrician, couldn't find one because they were busy, and then sort of said, oh, well, maybe it's hide first after all. Mother went home, delivered a breech at home, and the paramedics came to see this baby hanging out, and baby sadly got very, very badly damaged. So there's a couple of interesting cases.